Welcome to the panel presentation on a Sunday morning or evening, depending where you are. My name is Frank Lishing Tang. I'm a faculty professor and co-director of Project Developing Chinese Language Teachers at New York University. I'm honored to serve as the moderator of this panel discussion. We have here a very distinguished panel of experienced and dedicated Chinese language educators, school leaders, and university faculty members. First, let me introduce the four panelists. Dr. Jeff Bizzle, say wave, Jeff, is the head of the Chinese American International School in San Francisco, California. CAIS is the nation's first and one of the most successful Mandarin English dual language immersion school in the United States. Founded 30 years ago in 1981. Our the second panelist is Teresa Lee. Li Shanshan, I don't know why her image is not shown here. She is a passionate and devoted Mandarin language teacher at Gary Comer College Prep School located on the south side of Chicago. And Shanshan speaks perfect Mandarin, and her accent is better than mine because I have a Shanghainese accent. 我讲国语有上海口音，他的国语没有。待会大家听他讲讲看。And now let me introduce Dr. Claudia Ross, Professor of Chinese Studies at University of Michigan and a Professor Emeritus of College of Holocaust. She is a long-time advocate in Chinese language education in the country. And last but not least, Dr. Huajing Mas, Associate Professor in the College of Education of the University of Kentucky. She's also the Executive Director of the Office of Chinese Initiative. Now, I'm going to go to the panelists. Please share with the audience how you got involved in the Chinese language education and your experience in teaching and learning of Chinese. And we'll go alphabetically. So, Jeff, you go first, please.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Tang, and thank you for organizing us. This group was really benefited from your leadership and your organizational skills. You, as I said in our organizational meeting, you brought order to chaos, and you're both a gentleman and a scholar. So I was actually sitting in the living room of my tiny little apartment in, I think, 1986, when a friend of mine called me on the telephone and said, let's go to China. And within like 5 seconds, I said yes. And that's how the journey began. And since that time, I've lived and worked in China mainland China and Taiwan for 15 years. I did an advanced degree in Chinese language and literature at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin. And I've been in education for my entire career, but in the year 1999, I was recruited and went to mainland China to run a program there called SYA, or School Year Abroad, a consortium of, 40-some U.S. high schools that sent kids over for 1 year to learn and live in China. And in 2010, I left Beijing and came to San Francisco, where I am now, and I'm head of school at Chinese and American International School, as Dr. Tang said. So that's a synopsis of my journey.
Okay. Huajing thinks Toshura is not here yet.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Tang, for your introduction. I totally echo Jeff's sentiment on your leadership for this plenary session. So I got my PhD in Chinese art history from Oxford in England. And the reason why I say this is because, however, I have been teaching in the classroom. This means K-12 as well as college classrooms since 2000, and also directing Chinese language program, recruiting Chinese teachers and training Chinese teachers. So much so that a friend of mine said that I have gone astray from my art history, 不务正业. How I got astray started in 2000 when I founded a Chinese language program in mainstream American K-12 public school in Brookline, Massachusetts, while teaching my Chinese art history in Simmons College. So this Chinese program I founded was then featured in ABC World News Tonight in 2005. I was also instrumental in establishing a high school exchange program between Brookline High School and the Gaoxin No. 1 High School in Xi'an in 1998. So this program not only really helped the Chinese language program in the high school, but also boosted the K-12 Chinese language program because the parents of the young children saw the potential of this program and the kids going to high school. So in 2007, however, when the Chinese language program I founded faced being shut down because of due to lack of funding, the parents actually who saw the value of this program campaigned for a tax override in the town in order to fund the program. And of course, the motion won overwhelmingly. So the Chinese language program got to stay forever as long as the law in the town lasts. So when my friend said that I have gone astray from art history, she was only partially right, because I was also able to leverage my training and knowledge in Chinese art and integrate Chinese art into Chinese language teaching. I have been training Chinese teachers, on how to integrate Chinese art and use visual thinking strategy, VTS, into Chinese language teaching, aiming to incorporate content as well as critical thinking skills in Chinese language teaching. So I have been doing a lot of training in China and Europe in the past 20 years. I'll stop there, Dr. Tang.
Thank you, Arjun. And Claudia?
Okay. Long story, but I'll make it short. I started studying Chinese really my first year of graduate school in 1970, long time ago. And I did it to fulfill a language requirement for my major in linguistics as an undergraduate major, which I had to finish up. So I had no intention of continuing Chinese. But then, and again, this is going to be a recurring theme, I think, through all of us, and it certainly has been through this conference so far. There was money for staying abroad. And I had to do 2 years of Chinese language study in order to be able to do it. And so I did another year. And then I went to, and again, this is 1972 now. We all know what this is politically. I was in Taiwan. I was in a wonderful language immersion program. We studied Chinese for 4 hours a day. We lived in Taiwan. Nobody spoke any English in those days, although my neighbors spoke Japanese, another story. And I realized at the end, well, it didn't take long. You start dreaming in Chinese, you start thinking in Chinese, and suddenly you realize that even though you never thought that you could learn another language, you are living this language and it's becoming part of you. And that was probably the most exciting thing that has ever happened to me. And it's something that I tried to communicate to my students. So long story, I got a PhD at the University of Michigan. I've never taught there, but in linguistics in Chinese, but I had taught there in the English Language Institute, and I had experience teaching English as a foreign language. My first position was at Cornell, where I taught for 2 years as a linguist, also running the first and second year Chinese language program and using all of my teaching English as a foreign language skill. So I had some training there. So I've been a study abroad director for a year in Beijing, very difficult year in 1985 to 6. I was a Jan term director for the CET program from 1996. Another language immersion, very interesting, see it from the other side, students learning Chinese. And I've been teaching Chinese on and off for 40 years, but most recently, 34 years at the College of the Holy Cross, where I've gone from a professor to a chair of the Department of Modern Languages, now World Languages. And then somewhere along the way, I wound up having a couple of pivotal moments. One, ACTFL proficiency tests, introduction. So the whole introduction to ACTFL guidelines, again, another mind-blowing experience for me, connected me more to my field, became an advocate for professionalization in my department of modern languages. And then in 2012, with some wonderful colleagues who have stayed together, through this program, we successfully received a Store Talk grant to do teacher training. And with the exception of 2 years, one was a SARS year, and SARS year is a COVID year. I did SARS too, but COVID year, and one was the year we just thought, let's take a break. We have continued to do this program, and we've been funded for the next cycle of grants. So we're gearing up for the next cycle. It's been teacher training, and it's been absolutely fantastic. So I retired from Holy Cross in December of 2020. So that's my emerita title, but I've continued as Store Talk director. I also write textbooks and reference grammars, and my field, that is my professional, like Huajing, my background was in linguistics, and I'm still using it, both when I teach and when I explain. And when I try to see language, both from the perspective of a Chinese speaker, which I'm not, but I've got lots of good friends who can help me with instincts, and from a non-native speaker trying to learn Chinese. And I think it's really important to have both perspectives as you move forward. So as you can tell, I love what I do. Done.
Thank you. Never stop working. That's the dedication, we call it. I'm so glad that Tashira now joined us, and she got some technical problem to get in. As a punishment, I just texted her and I said, you have to speak Chinese a little bit, because I bragged about your Chinese having better accent than mine, a Shanghainese accent. Please.
大家好，大家早上好啊！对不起，我有一点迟到了。
没问题。
But hi everyone. As you all can see, my name is Tashira Lee. I am a teacher on the south side of Chicago at Gary Comer College Prep. And I believe we're in the stage now where we're just giving a little bit of our Chinese introduction, correct?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, my story is a little bit unorthodox. I began studying Chinese language a little over 10 years ago. And that was actually, I'm giving away my age here, but that was my freshman year of high school. And it was funny because I didn't select Chinese language. They selected it for me. The people who were in charge at my school, which is on the west side of Chicago, actually. I went to Westinghouse College Prep. And my mother and I were probably about a week before school started. We were looking at my class schedule, and she was like, "Oh, you're taking Mandarin." And I was like, what is that? An orange? Like I had no idea what it was going to be about. And she was like, "No, silly, that's Chinese." I was like, "Oh, okay, well, cool. I'm taking Chinese." But from the first day, my teacher, Li Laoshi, she walked in and she taught us how to sort of traditionally start class. And she teaches us, 上课. Right. And every time she says that, we stand up. She says, 大家好. We give her a bow. And actually, no, she says, 上课, and we say, 起立. And she said, 大家好. And we say, 您好, Li Laoshi. And then she says, 请坐. And now that has become a practice that I use in my class. But from that very first day, she came in with such enthusiasm and excitement for teaching and for like giving us this new tool for success, right? And I thought that was just really cool. And at the time, I was 14 and I wasn't thinking anything about it. I was just like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to take a language. Oh, my teacher looks like she's going to be really, really fun. And this class is really, really fun. So I began to pick it up very, very easily. And she noticed that. And she asked me if I wanted to participate in the MCTA Chinese speech contest. And of course, I didn't really know what a Chinese speech contest would consist of. She was just like, you just have to speak in Chinese for 4 minutes and I'll help you put a speech together and I'll help you prepare for it. So she did exactly that. She signed me up. We prepared for about 4 months for just those 4 minutes. But that preparation just kind of really propelled me forward in my spoken fluency, and more so in my reading fluency as well, because she printed out the entire speech and I would read it with her. And of course, a lot of words I didn't know yet because I was only in Chinese 1, but she would help me out with all of those words. And then we would practice how to just speak in front of an audience. And that really helped propel my confidence in spoken Chinese language. And so that's why, Frank, he's like, I want to punish you because your Chinese is so good. I credit my Chinese skill to my creator and woman of faith. So I credit that to God and I credit that to my hardworking Chinese teachers. So after my freshman year of high school, I believe actually, Claudia, I believe that I did DePaul Star Talk after that. And so I met my second year Chinese teacher at DePaul Star Talk in Chicago. And then Star Talk was another very great program that really helped push me more into like Chinese language and culture. And then that was the summer before my sophomore year. And then the summer before my junior year of high school, this is me still in high school, I participated in a program that was part of the 100K Strong initiative that took 24 CPS students to Hangzhou, China. So I was extremely excited that I got that scholarship opportunity. I was able to go with 2 of my friends from my high school. We stayed in Hangzhou for a month before the last day. We took a tiny trip to Shanghai for a day, and then we went home. And after that, I continued that the entire time I was in high school. I continued to participate in 中文演讲比赛, Chinese speech contest, and I majored in Chinese language and culture in college at Valparaiso University, and I studied abroad again. And long story short, I am now a Chinese language teacher at high school on the south side of Chicago.
Thank you. What a wonderful story. Yes. Thank you. What a wonderful story. This is the kind of teacher that we want to develop and recruit and have her in every schools in the States. Thank you, Tashira, for sharing your personal learning stories. It is just simply wonderful. Now you can see when I began, I said this is a distinguished panel. Age that like Claudia and me are at the retirement, and Tashira is the new blood, and then we have the leaders like Hua Jing and Jeff. So now we're going to move to the theme that of our panel, that is shortage. It is not just the Chinese language teachers. It is actually for the entire teachers in the United States. Let me quote from a recent report published in 2022 by TNTP, the New Teacher Project. It says, schools across the country are facing their toughest staffing challenges and teacher attrition in recent memory. A large number of teachers are quitting and they are thinking of retiring or taking leave of absence, and that fewer people are applying to fill in the vacancies at a moment when students need diverse, effective teachers more than ever. I have to say that the situation is happening to us, the Chinese language education field. It is even worse because of the unfavorable political environment around the world. So this panel, we will address these issues through the lens of identifying challenges, exploring time-tested strategies, and cultivating local language teachers, and encouraging heritage speaker and non-heritage speakers to join the teaching profession. So let us begin our discussion. And the first presenter will be Jeff, and he's going to address what kind of challenges we face and what we're going to do. Jeff, please. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks so much, Frank. And I appreciate that introduction. And I'm trying to set a timer for myself here. I think you want us to limit our remarks. I'm going to address this issue at the school level primarily, and to a certain extent at the individual level, because of the factors that Dr. Tang just mentioned. This is a macro problem that is not only felt in our field of Chinese language education, and frankly, I mean, one of the things about this platform is I can't see who is attending this session, and I mean, in California right now, it's really early in the morning where I am, and there may be nobody. But if there are teachers or administrators attending, the challenges that Frank just mentioned are ones that we really, in the short term, don't have the ability to address. And so while that may seem somewhat pessimistic, I think that actually, as teachers, if any of you out there are Chinese language teachers, I hope that you're taking some heart and some motivation from Teshora's story, which to me was unbelievably motivating. I mean, storytelling is the best way to get messages across. And obviously, Teshora connect, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, connected with her teacher. Thank you. All right. And connected, and there were lots of really, really important individuals in her life, which essentially kind of opened doors and blazed a path. And now here she is teaching, and sort of basically, giving back and paying it forward, et cetera. And everybody on this call is in a position, either directly or indirectly, to impact sort of the next Teshora Lee. And that's really sort of what it's all about. But that's a long-term project. I mean, as young as you are, Teshora, it was a 10-year journey to get where you are, if my math is correct. So anyway, that's sort of the big picture. I think at the school level, I think because we can't address directly and in the short term these sort of macro issues, unless your school has a special relationship with some institution in Taiwan, where I think the politics are, more favorable. I think that the most efficient way for you at local, at the school level, to address this phenomenon that Frank has mentioned, is not through increasing the teacher supply or recruiting teachers, but it's through supporting and retaining the teachers that you have right now. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. I guess that it's been my experience in both as a teacher and as a school leader that the premise for retaining teachers, we don't get into education necessarily because we want to make it rich. But we do all need to be able to live at least a sustainable and a modestly comfortable lifestyle. And so once that problem is solved, it's been my experience that the number one thing that teachers, both Chinese teachers and teachers of other subjects, require is support in the form of community and in the form of opportunities to learn and grow as professionals. And the community piece, the morale piece, the supporting individual teachers with supportive communities, that costs us nothing financially. There is no cost to that. But what it does require is a commitment and a deliberate choice to make community building and to make your teachers feel seen and heard and included. You need to choose to do that, and you need to develop a program which does it. And this is something that leaders can do from the top down, but it's also something that teachers can create. And, there are many examples, probably some of you are on this call, of teachers who have done this. And the other thing is support in the form of professional learning. And unfortunately, the factors, or at least one of the factors that Frank mentioned at the beginning, which is economics or finance, is working against, in this sort of pandemic / transition to endemic period. Resources have been impacted, and professional development is often the first thing that we lose. So we could look at this from a sort of a pessimistic standpoint, but I would argue that right now, there in my career in the field of sort of China-focused education, which goes back to the 80s, I don't think I've lived in a more important time for us to be doing the things that we're doing. And I have a member on my own school's board who has a foreign service background, who is on a tear right now. He's talking about the deteriorating relationship between mainland China and the US is a reason for us in Chinese education to sort of lay low and keep a low profile. And to try to dissociate ourselves with mainland China for political reasons. And, this reflects his foreign service lens. And I'm arguing the exact opposite, that there has never been a more important time for you to be doing the job you're doing, so that we can sort of transcend this, what will ultimately in the big picture be a momentary sort of period of tension between the two countries, and to help your students to realize that despite the politics, what is really going to matter in the long term is the ability for people in both countries, and really in all countries, to see through these tensions and to see each other as real sort of living, breathing individuals, the way that Tashara has done. And so I think that now is the time to double down and keep our heads up and continue our work proudly. And Frank, my timer just said I'm at 7 minutes, so I'm going to wrap up. And I would suggest that even in a time where resources are limited, the pandemic has shown us, believe it or not, a kind of a silver lining and a way forward, which is this. All schools and frankly, all organizations have become excellent at using technology to network with with other people across time and across space. This meeting is an example. I mean, it's, 7 something in the morning in California, and I'm talking to Frank in New York. And what's happened is that, as educators, we're really, really good at using technology. And I think that Chinese teachers, the ones that I know, have actually been very, very technologically savvy for a long time. And I completely admire the ways in which Chinese teachers have organized themselves across, not just across the country, but really across the world online. And in particular, there are lots of WeChat chat groups. And I'm actually gonna put my name in the chat. I think people can see it. Hang on one moment. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and if you're interested, I can send you the name of a number of of groups where people have self-organized, and the exchanges in these groups has been very, very rich, including the advertising different PD opportunities, webinars and things of that nature. It's very self-organizing. It's low cost. It's accessible from anywhere with a phone or a tablet or a computer. And I've just been super impressed by the sort of the initiative that individuals have taken to serve their fellow teachers. And I think that this is really what we need to do to get over this hump where we're sort of resource poor, and we're also dealing with these political tensions. And I would also say that one thing that this kind of online community has shown me is what I said initially: is it's not just professional development which teachers need in order to be, in order to retain them, but it's community, right? It's support from others at their schools, and in this case, the online community. So I guess I'll stop here. I guess what I would ask is if there are, I'm not that familiar with this platform, and if there are participants who can put things into the chat, that maybe you have some online groups that I don't know about on WeChat or other platforms, and you can put them and share them in the chat. But again, I put my email in the chat, and you can, if you can see it, which I don't know, you can write to me, and I'll share the names of the groups. Yeah,
Jeff, sorry to interrupt. It's actually, you put in, there's a column called the comments, and which is open to all. So while the panelists are speaking, you can share your information.
Okay,
and
thanks.
I'm sure later on you will have another, chance to share with us more about those organizations and websites. Thank you so much, Jeff. It's so inspiring. I think it's time, while we are facing so many challenges, it is time to double down our efforts and to work between the people. Let the politicians be politicians, but we are the educators, and we are working in the field of building the bridge between the peoples. And now, Tashira, may I invite you to share your perspective from a school classroom teacher and your students' point of view?
So first of all, I want to say that I think that Jeff's point of view was very, very concise, and I agree with the vast majority of things that he pointed out. There definitely needs to be sort of more community connections at the level that I'm at, which is like the hands-on level. I teach at a school on Chicago South Side. It's called Gary Comer, as I mentioned in my little intro. If you don't know who Gary Comer is, he is the creator of the brand Land's End. And I believe it was him who said, give me 1 second, because we have his quote and like a picture of him with students on one of our school walls. And he says that every child deserves the opportunity to explore the world beyond his or her neighborhood. And I thought that was extremely profound, especially given the conversation that we're having right now. And especially given the time that we're in right now, where, like you said, Jeff, we just don't have all of the necessary resources that we might need to be able to give children that, right? And that's really why I took this job, because I want my children to be able to see that there is a world outside of them. Like, there is a global neighborhood that they need to be interacting with, because if not, then they become so small-minded. And we want to make sure that we are cultivating new people who are very, very open-minded to the things that are happening outside in the world. And this is how we sort of cater to the entire child, because we're not just saying, oh, okay, well, here, let me just give you this because it's part of like some standardized test, or it's because we want to meet numbers per se, but we are treating them like the human beings that they are, and making sure that we continue to have that human being sort of mindset helps us create classrooms where we are, like I said before, catering to them as individuals and just as people. And we're making sure that we're teaching teaching our children how to treat other people as people. Wrote down some more notes here. We also need to have an appropriate level of hands-on training at the classroom level. We need to be well-versed in handling multiple scenarios that tend to happen throughout the day. And we can't begin to think of doing our jobs effectively until those individual child needs are met. And when I say this, I'm thinking of not just small children, because I used to work with early childhood and I used to teach a little bit of early childhood Chinese here and there. But now I work with high school students, and these high school students are still children. They are still growing. They are still learning. They are still figuring out big feelings in a big world with them just as one, sort of smaller person. So being able to appropriately handle or appropriately engage in conversation with the children, starting at their level, meeting them eye to eye, is something that I believe is extremely important, because, like I said, it cultivates a more worldly minded individual. They know how to treat people because they've been treated well themselves. I think that funding needs to be distributed to programs that intentionally benefit and support the entire child, so that when students enter the classroom setting, they're focused on learning in an atmosphere that the teacher has created, a healthy learning atmosphere. That's something that was cultivated for me, and I think it is still doable to this day, maybe even because of the pandemic. Like Jeff said, like, we've become a little bit more tech savvy. Like, we know how to reach students now who are in difficult scenarios. So if we can, provide funding in that sense to sort of reach out to them and make sure that they're still getting maybe not the typical hands-on learning that we might all be used to, but maybe more of a technological hands-on type of learning that, that would cater to their different needs. Again, just going over my notes here. But I believe, 100%, by starting at the student level, that really is my inspiration as I walk into work every day. And I tell parents all the time, when I'm on the phone or when I meet them in person, that learning Chinese language, not just learning any language, because you can become otherworldly in, learning Spanish or, any other language, but learning Chinese language, especially in a time right now where, like you said, our political environment has a lot of tension. It will allow the children to be able to still open up to people and have those conversations. And it teaches them to sort of not erase stereotypes, but let's dig into them. And let's make sure that we're not just listening to things that we might have seen or heard through media, because children are very, very, very in tune to what social media has to say these days. So right now, when we're teaching them Chinese language, we're not only teaching them language, but we're teaching them culture, and we're teaching them different social skills. And so they need those things to be able to be more worldly individuals. And I think that it will help us create just better people overall. My spiel is a little bit short.
I love this statement. We have a goal before us, not just to teach the language, but also the culture, but also social skills. Mm-hmm. But eventually we are cultivating our students to become worldly minded people, which Tashira mentioned a couple of times. Tashira, if you look at the comments, the teachers are commenting that, Tashira, you are inspiring. Your words are from the heart. They touch deeply. So we can see the sound echoing coming from the audience. And let's move to Claudia. Please share with us, how do we find people like Tashira? How we get heritage speaker and non-heritage speaker coming up to join us? You are muted.
I'm like, no, I'm okay. Please tell me when 5 minutes are up, because that's all I want to take. I want to talk about something that, again, it's a common theme throughout this conference and the Chinese language teaching world. It's resources. We need resources. And I think, again, echoing Jeff, I don't know who's listening, but I'm hoping that there are government officials who are listening who have influence over where funding goes. There are two programs that I'm just going to talk about briefly. They've all been mentioned before. One is the Store Talk program, which, as I said, I've got some experience with, never as an administrator. And the other is the flagship program, which, again, I have no personal firsthand experience with, but I know a lot about through, interaction with people who are directing these programs and students who are in them. So I think that the most important thing in this field is to give people financial incentive. That is to say, you, from the government officials, make that financial commitment and provide the financial incentive so that people will continue or begin Chinese. So the Store Talk program that Tashura joined in for your second year class, right? Second year experience after first year. Again, this is a funding that was funding from the government, from the National Security Administration. And it enabled this local program to provide an excellent experience for Tashura and all of her classmates, and inspired you to continue. I've had many students over the years who started their language program in Store Talk programs, in the student programs, and they are often my best and most highly motivated students. So, because the programs are great. I love Store Talk because, because there's money. And the teachers who participate get paid, and the students either are participating for free. I mean, they're participating for free. There's no fee no fee allowed for students. And then also because the standards for the Store Talk program are very high. They're based on the world standards for language learning, the national, and they are. And they're very good at making sure that programs adhere to these standards. So if you go into a Store Talk program as a teacher, trainer, or as a student, you're getting guided first class experience, including the opportunity to develop as a whole person. This is one of the guidelines for the Store Talk program. Now, there are other programs that do this too. Again, my experience is with Store Talk, but I also love it because the money comes from the government, and we're able to provide it for free to the participants. I want to say about the teacher training program, which I've been directly involved in. We've had, except for this last year where everything was remote, we've always had an in-person program. Our plan next time is to do hybrid. Some of it will be remote and some of it will be in person. But the point is here that the teachers pay nothing, and they get enthusiastic about teacher learning through their participation, not just in the programs that we've run, the Read On program, but in other Store Talk programs. We've seen that people who apply to be our teachers or our participants in the teacher training program have often had multiple Store Talk experiences. Once they learn, they get enthusiastic about learning more. I asked some of my participants, a limited number, and all of my teacher trainers, what their involvement has been in training in the local and national level since their participation in the Store Talk program. And the list is so long, I can't begin to read or even to quantify it. So what we have is a multiplier effect, a professional level program that gives people pride, experience, skills, leads to people saying, I can be a leader in this field. I can conduct a local workshop. I can submit a panel for NCLC or the Chinese Language Teachers Association or my regional Chinese Language Association or the Modern Language Association or ACTFL. And I can tell people what I've learned and help them to learn it too. And so inspiring teachers through this empowering experience of becoming more professional is a really, really important aspect of the program. Flagship programs, Madeline Spring talked about this in the first plenary on Friday. I just want to say there are 13 centers, and I'm very familiar with them. And one of the things that I love about this is a change in the field. When I started studying Chinese at the University of Michigan, there were only a few places in the United States that taught Chinese, Mandarin. And in addition to that, only a few that received any government funding. It was through, I think, the National Defense Fellowship Act or something. The point of it is that money only went to Ivy League schools and key universities across the country. It was a top-down selection process. Now, StarTalk, Flagship, these are bottom-up selection processes. The school says, I want to have a program. The teachers in the school, the professionals in the school say, we want to have a program. We put together the application. We go up with an application. And if you see where these StarTalk programs and Flagship programs are, they are located all over the country and not necessarily in the places that you've heard of because they're so famous and everybody wants to apply there. These are excellent programs, and they're given out in a much fairer way and distributed in a way that reaches many more people, many more students, many more teachers than could otherwise be available. I should stop here. I want to say one other plug really quickly. In Worcester, Massachusetts, where Holy Cross is located, one of our neighbor schools is the Worcester Polytech Institute, now called WPI. It is a STEM school. It's a STEM school with people who are randomly hired with a language mission, and their Chinese language program has grown into a Chinese hub. They're trying to take the STEM students, many of them heritage students of China, heritage learners of Chinese, but not all, who are primarily studying STEM fields, and provide another parallel track of language so that they understand how they can integrate their STEM field expertise with Chinese language to go on to develop careers that are more internationally focused and then integrate both. I think this is a great model. And again, I think integrating that domain, that professional area with your language program to provide you with tools you can use to work in the international arena are very, very important. And I will stop here.
Thank you, Claudia. And for the insight about the federal funding project. Yes, we need to lobby the government to provide more funding for language programs and including the Chinese and other language programs. The Americans cannot go back to the time that we are English-only country. No, we have already opened up to the world, and our kids are no longer the kids, say, 30, 45, 50 years ago. They are now much more open-minded. So now my question is now, how do we work, generate and develop effective teachers? And I think Hua Jing has something to share with us.
Thank you, Jia. Thank you, Dr. Tang. I am setting the 25 to 6 minute timer right here. So I would like to have participants to have, some interaction. So what Li Laoshi, Tashura had just shared, so many people were saying how powerful and inspiring. And I also believe this is really related to, again, cultivating new teachers. I think, teachers like Li Laoshi in the classroom itself is a role model for students. I think for students to become the Chinese language teachers. And I just want to make that point outside of what I had prepared. So I would like to start, and I also want to say that I really appreciate this opportunity to be together with my fellow panelists and experts on Chinese language. I feel very encouraged to see our experts and panelists in their different views in the area of cultivating Chinese teachers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from a couple of existing challenges and then provide a couple of ideas. Okay, so we know that so far the formal institutional training programs for Chinese teachers are mostly in Chinese universities and Taiwan universities, perhaps. I don't know a lot about institutions in Taiwan. And although some U.S. institutions also have begun to launch the sort of teaching Chinese second language sort of degree, students with a BA or MA for teaching Chinese as second language graduated, I'm talking about from Chinese universities, have a great language foundation, meaning the 语言本体知识, right? But unfortunately, in my humble opinion, that they do not have access to real classroom practicum experience. And we all know why, because, teaching Chinese to speakers who are non-Chinese, and especially in the K-12 area, these kids are not in China. Therefore, it is hard to get the practicum opportunities for those student teachers. And second challenge is cultivating about teachers. We need to be intentional on which level the teachers were training. Are they college level or are they K-12 level? Because the students are different and their cognitive stages and level are different. And therefore, we need to be also intentional about that. So based on these observations and challenges, I believe that U.S. universities and Chinese universities should partner to train Chinese teachers for American K-12 schools. I'm just talking about K-12 schools. So first idea, I would like to propose a joint 1+1 master's program, because the Chinese teaching Chinese as second language students, what they can do is then after they graduate from U.S., they can become Chinese teachers in the U.S. And their first year would be spending the first year of study with a Chinese university in their own program. Then they come to the U.S. university for 1.5 year or 1.5 years, with a first year taken in courses, and then the half year would be the entire semester is devoted to do student teaching in the K-12 Chinese language schools. And we have those schools where we have the existing Chinese language programs in schools that we can place these teachers to be student teaching, where they would be paired with a Chinese language teacher in the classroom. So think about the benefit of that. And so the 本体知识 and how to teach, they have already got that taken care of. Now the 1.5 years in the U.S., they not only learn and practicum teaching with the Chinese language teachers in the classroom, but also they're immersed in the schools, American schools, and therefore really understand the American school culture, which is very important for their teaching overall. And also we would be able to ensure quality of our new teachers. So you might say, well, we're talking about funding, right? So this is not, we're just talking about this can happen. What about funding? Who is going to help these Chinese teachers, Chinese students to pay for the tuition, right? I mean, the American school tuition is, after all, a lot more than what the Chinese institution universities charge for tuition. So I'm going to propose that, really the Chinese universities should be able to provide the tuition assistance to help the university help their students to pay for U.S. universities institution. And those administrators or university administrators or program directors who are listening to this, do please tap in your Chinese institution, partner institution, and they will be able to find funding for these students who will be able to come and join us. Okay, oh my gosh, that's my timer. And then the second one, I'm going to just quickly talk about Chinese immersion teachers. And it's the other idea of 2+2s, which is Chinese institution, the teachers for masters for teaching Chinese as second language, not master, bachelors. They study first 2 years in Chinese institution and then come to the U.S. institution, their College of Education, to pursue a elementary education degree. I know a lot of college of educations have this bachelor's degree. Once they're in that program, they will totally understand how the curriculum setting and how to teach all those core subjects in our elementary school. And we know in our elementary school, the teachers, one classroom teacher teaches all the core subjects. And once those two, the ability or the expertise on how to teach Chinese language, plus the expertise and knowledge on how to teach the core elementary level courses, these two combined would, I think, maybe too simple a solution, but it would be at least provide some much needed sort of teachers for immersion K through 6 at least, or elementary school immersion Chinese teachers. I'm going to stop there, Dr. Tang, so we have more time for a question.
Thank you for watching your proposed programs working internationally with teachers from outside the country is great. And now for all of you to chip in, we have two sides of a coin. On the one hand, how do we retain the current teachers? We don't want to lose them. The best policy to overcome teacher shortage is not to have it happen. On the other hand, how do we create new blood and get teachers from internationally and domestically? So any ideas and strategies, please share with us.
I can start. I think one of the ways we all know, first thing I wanted to say, pay the teachers more. But I also know that a lot of us become teachers in this profession not for the money. We're all so talented. We could have gone into the ministry and make so much money. But we stayed in education because we're here. We know, we're all just talking about in the chat, we have a mission. We're all passionate about, teaching, about fostering our young talents. So I think one other thing that's important is the support that Jeff had talked about. From administrative levels and from professional organization level, and the professional development is very, very important. And I would like to raise the issue of, normally in professional development, we do a lot of hands-on, right? Classroom management, strategies, technology, and all of those. I would like to also voice out to those who are out there hosting or organizing professional development for Chinese teachers to keep in mind about the diversity, equity, and inclusion that is being talking about, that's going on in the schools. And some of our Chinese teachers may not really understand those concepts. So that need to be really integrated into the professional development. And the second part is mental health. Throughout this pandemic, the students' mental health is huge, but so is our teachers. I'm going to just stop there.
Social emotional learning is so needed for students as well as for us. Claudia, and then Tashira.
I'll be very brief. For you teachers out there, look for your regional Chinese Language Teachers Association and join. The bar to entry is very low. The fees are low. The opportunities are great. And you'll feel a community. You'll feel a community as soon as you join that you may not feel if you're the only teacher in your school. There's also great ideas through these programs for developing the kind of community support that Huajing was talking about. Get your community to buy into that Chinese program so they don't eliminate it. Very important. And just connect with others and do it that way.
Get into the community. Yes, thank you. Tashira?
I agree with Claudia about just creating sort of a community and increasing the partnerships that are happening to boost international relations that high school students, increasing those international relations so that high school students can benefit from the resources that both countries stand to offer. Programs like the 100K Strong Initiative, Start Talk, CSL, CTI, et cetera. I've been on a hunt for more programs like that. And I think it's because that I'm not part of the Chinese Language Teachers Association, right? That I might not have been able to access certain programs like that for my students. I also think there's a little bit of a lack of in-house responsibility on a countrywide scale that's meant to gear American high school students for careers in international studies in general. They need to know what's out there, what's tangible for them so it can help them succeed in the future. So yeah, I just want to keep that brief.
Okay, Jeff, please.
Yeah, I'll just 2 more points. The first is you all should get Tashara to Zoom into your classrooms and talk to your kids if you want them to be motivated. Oh my goodness. And the second point I want to make is I guess it's more of a philosophical one. And you know, as I sort of have gone through my career, I've increasingly realized that, you know, you can kind of divide issues into 2 categories. One is things that you can control and influence, and the other are things that you cannot control and influence. And I would encourage everybody, as we sort of look at just myriad challenges in our field, is to kind of put those challenges into buckets and focus on those things over which you have some degree of control and influence. And the happiest people that I know in my life are people who spend most of their time focusing on the things that are within their control and influence. And the most unhappy people I've ever met are people who focus on things over which they have no control, or they mistakenly think that they have no control over them. Because if you do that, then it just becomes this sort of downward spiral of complaint and self-pity. And what we need right now is focus, optimism, and a sense of mission. So Frank, those are my comments.
Very good. Thank you very much. I think we are running out of time. I want to just quickly summarize. And I like what Jeff just said. Let's, number 1, focus on the things we can do. And secondly, optimism. We need to be confident and optimistic and join what Claudia proposes to community. And then, as Tashira said, building up international relationship with schools and students and people, and eventually creating innovative programs. But I want to make one final point. It has appeared in our comments repeatedly, is we need to give current in-service teachers, Jeff, you have to be very careful. You are the head of the school. They said that teachers need support, moral support, material support, social emotional support, and respect, and resources. And I hope this panel, I believe this panel has provided with our audience with lots of opportunities and resources. And I hope teachers and participants feel free to contact all the panelists, and me included, at frank.tang@nyu.edu, and that we will form a community, we'll address this issue together as a group. When we work together, we have a better chance to win. That concludes our panel discussion. Thank you, Jeff, Claudia, Tarisha, and Tashira, and Hua Jing, and thank you for all who are participating. And thank you, Asia Society, for giving us this opportunity.